Welcome to another episode of A Different Voice, where we look at solution for our community. This is the day that we supposed to be looking at many different things, and we'll have a panel that will discuss that with us. One of my panel is Mr. Christian White, and he will tell you his life story. Mr. Christian White, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My story begins many years ago, and like so many others, I grew up in a community that was crime-ridden. A lot of it was socioeconomic. I was kind of the opposite of it, where I was raised by my father and my mother wasn't around. My father was emotionally absent, mostly because he just worked constantly. He just did barely enough to put food on the table, paid the rent, he kept a roof over our head. For that, I'll be grateful. Yet there wasn't a lot of guidance in the home. And with that said, a lot of things were allowed to happen and not happen that probably shouldn't have or should have. So abuse was rampant in my household for many, many, many years. And not to get too much into that, it certainly left some deep scars emotionally and mentally. And words like post-traumatic stress, depression, things of that nature didn't necessarily exist at that time. So I didn't know until later that I had a serious problem in the head growing up. And what I began to understand is that there were nights, there were days where if I didn't stay up all night feeling bad about life and myself, then when I did fall asleep, I would have constant nightmares and night terrors, and I would wake up sweating, not understanding why I was going through things like this. Around 13 years old, my father sat me down and he said, Christian, he sat my brother and I down, and he told us, he said, Christian, I can't afford you anymore, you need to leave. And I mean, at this point in time, it's like, how do you take something like that? So we were given options. I had met my biological mother a few months before that. She was residing in Kentucky. And then I have an uncle and aunt who live in Roxbury. So my brother and I, we chose to move to Roxbury because at least if we were going to not be in our normal environment, at least we would be in Boston, which was close to pretty much where everything was going on. At this time, we were staying in Cambridge. So we moved in with my uncle and aunt, who are both pastors, and it was like night and day. Like, it was so much of a transition for me that just before I turned 14, I actually asked to have a chins put out on me so I could go into foster care.
One thing I noticed you mentioned you talk about from you were 13, from that time. Were you in a single family home, or were you your father and mother living together?
Well, I didn't meet my real mother until I was 13 years old. So it was a single family home, I guess statistically, yet he had many girlfriends in and out. He was married for a few years, but when they would argue, fuss and fight of that nature, we would move in with whatever woman he knew at the time.
The next thing I want to ask you is that, did you go to school?
I did go to school, many public schools.
All right, and I know you became a gangster after that, right?
Yes.
And being a gangster, did you pick that up from school, or did you pick it up from the lifestyle you live in?
I picked it up from the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were given the choice of where we wanted to move to,
mm-hmm.
I moved in with my uncle and aunt right on Wambach Street, which is right at the corner of Wambach and Humboldt.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been the early 90s. So this is when gang activity is everywhere around you. So that's where I began to pick up the actual gang lifestyle itself.
So when were you first introduced to the whole matter being arrested?
When I was early, as soon as I turned 13, I was going to school in a suburb called Medford, and I was going to Medford High. And there was a race riot that had happened there. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that I was coming out of one of the corridors. They had sectioned off all of the black people in a certain corridor. And when they were leading us out, I happened to see an officer hitting my sister, who was a grade above me. And I ran over there, jumped on the cop, started hitting the cop to protect my sister. And that was my first brush with the law.
Right, you were arrested. What were you arrested for?
I was arrested for disorderly conduct.
Right, how long did you spend in
Well, I was a juvenile, so they released us to our care of our stepmother at the time.
Mm-hmm. And when next you got arrested?
I next got arrested when I was 14.
Just a year apart?
Just a year apart.
And that offense was?
That offense was also for disorderly conduct and going AWOL from a program.
So after 14 now, when was the next time you got arrested?
So that would be fast forwarded maybe about a year. And it would have been, that's when things really started beginning to happen.
So between 13 and 16, you have a number of life changes happening to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you mentioned earlier that you were abused.
Yes.
Was that a part of it that caused that change in your life?
Absolutely.
Right. So at 16, you were arrested for?
As I was arrested before 16
Yeah.
for several drug-related offenses, because by this time, I'm actually hanging out on Humboldt Avenue. So I'm becoming a part of the fabric and everything that's going on around me.
Right. And the last time you were arrested, because I know that was 2006?
2006, yes.
Right. And you were arrested for?
I was arrested originally for a home invasion.
Right.
They pulled our car over, and I had a gun on me. The home invasion never made it to indictment. I was left with the gun that went into indictment. I was the enhancement of armed career criminal level 3 and another double enhancement of second firearm offense. And that's what I was arrested for in 2006.
And what became of that? You spent how long in incarceration?
So after much haggling, and because they won't sentence you for a double enhancement, I ended up taking a plea deal of 10 years with 2 years of probation on and after for the ammunition. I got 10 years for the gun, and that was under ACC level 1.
Right, and at that stage, at the same time, you had a child that were being born?
No, he was almost born.
Yeah.
So when I went to prison, my son's mother was 8.5 months pregnant. When I came home from prison, he was just about 9 years old.
Okay, so no one noticed the ad say from single cell to single dad.
Absolutely.
So your greatest passion now is that child. Where have you been since you came out of jail? When 2007, 16?
2015.
2015. Are you on probation?
No, I'm not. I completed probation just about a year ago.
All right. And so what has life been since the probation?
Even before the probation, from the moment I hit the ground running. Life has been fantastic. It's obviously a struggle at times because I'm a full-time single dad now, but it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Before you go and tell that, I know you become a life coach, right?
Yes.
And I see a lot of persons coming out, motivational and life coach,
Yes.
right? And you go around telling that story, right? In 30 seconds, tell me about that motivational, how you motivate people. Tell me about it.
Well, first of all, my platform is mental health awareness. I motivate people by letting them know that one thing the prisons and the streets did to me was rob me of my imagination. I could not see myself or transplant myself outside of the neighborhood I grew up in. And that became a big deal for me to show others that if you can find the moments to actually think to yourself of what you're worth, then you can be your best that you can be.
And as I said, A Different Voice is all about solution.
Yes.
And we look for people who could bring solution, not just looking at the problem. You are part of the solution, right? Do you regret going to prison?
Absolutely not. I have no regrets in my life at this point.
You have no regrets?
No, I wouldn't be me right now if I did.
Okay, and I'm proud to have met you because most things, right, on your side, you went to prison for a firearm, right?
Yes.
Firearm is the most problematic thing in the community right now. People, well, you know, originally firearm was designed to hunt, right? Now it is being used hunting humans, right?
Well, may I say something to that?
Yeah.
Firearms, like drugs, are mediums. They're tools of expression. That's why, for me, it's more of the thought processes that go on. It's just that in our community, we live in a gun culture, a drug culture.
And I want you to hold it at that, because we're going to go over to a panel. I have some of the people, the best people that are here to look at that, because it's a community thing. And we want to look at it, and we want to look at, that's why I want your story, because we're all victims, right? You said mental health, you had to deal with that aspect of it, right?
Yes.
I have with me an attorney that, I'm fond of her because the thing about it, she reminds me of somebody on a show, and she will examine that. We can't examine much about the mental aspect of it because we're not psychologists, right? But we're gonna go to a break, right? And when we go to that break, we're gonna come back, we're gonna sit at the panel, and we're gonna look at that aspect of it, the whole matter, how we can come to this tool that you mentioned just a while, how we can come to a solution that will work effectively, right? So we're gonna go to a break, right? And when we go to that break, we're gonna come back.
Need to be reformed, if not abolished outright.
The world seems to be in chaos today. One may ponder if this is the right way. There must be a better way. If we all seem to say the same, there needs to be a better court and legal system.
Try not to pass judgment.
Let's journey to a place where others are willing to talk about it and hear what they have to say.
Everybody is treated equal, regardless of their income, their skin color.
I think it's incomprehensible that punitive measures doled out by the state can be turned into a capitalistic venture. You're essentially incentivizing crime at that point.
Stop locking up teenagers.
I say stop seeing color and see what's wrong or right. And make sure that the person is completely innocent before being arrested.
You mean guilty?
Yeah, guilty.
And not even miss their bed. I take cages to your bed. Say no money for children. Schools a pipeline to prison. Discriminate legally. Employment of vote housing. Permanently lock the key. Stealing our humanity. We're the ball, the lightning. To strike injustice down. We will break the thunder. To break our family.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be blood. Next Thursday?
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So,
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Your son wants to get a cat, but you're allergic. Do you A, prepare yourself, B, make the best of it,
C squared equals...
25.
Good job!
or C, find a loophole? When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Welcome back to A Different Voice. We are here discussing discussing community solutions, and my panel here is a very good panel. We have District Attorney. I'm graduating you already. Candidate for this. Yes.
I'll take it.
Linda Champion.
I'm a candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney.
Right, look in that camera and tell them exactly.
Okay, my name is Linda Champion. I'm a candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney. Thank you so much for having me here today.
All right, so tell us more about you. Tell us more about you. Are you this Assistant District Attorney? Tell us what you do over there.
So just my background is I've been a lawyer for 15 years. I've been in the community. I have been running programs in the community. What differentiates me from the other candidates is I'm the only candidate that's actually created jobs, worked in the area of education, being a college professor for 12 years at Suffolk University. And I also understand the importance of housing and stabilizing families. I run a program through Urban Edge, which is called Champion Urban Edge, and we call it Q Realty. And that program is designed to help low to moderate income families, including those families that are homeless or with Section 8 vouchers, live out the American dream of finding a house. Particularly in an environment where it's very difficult, people are still discriminated against with respect to housing, particularly those families that have little to no money to put down. My job in the community is to help families in need of those services not only fix their credit, but also help them pull together the resources that they need for that down payment so that we can place them in their own home.
And we're going to need you. We're definitely going to need you. You know why we're going to need you? I heard that the low-income housing is going to be triple, right? And that's a thing what we need. Bobby G.
Yes, sir.
Good night, sir, or good afternoon.
Oh, I respond to both.
Tell them about you, and you're a voice in the community, so tell them about you.
Well, thank you. If I can be helpful, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here where you feel it could be helpful. I've been told I'm an expert on my own opinion. I agree with that. And I love to also hear and share and learn from the opinions of community folks, such as my extended family right here. And thank you for inviting me.
Right, and I just did earlier, I had Christian White, right? And he was telling us about the whole matter of the gangster life. And so you could expand on that, tell us more.
Sure. So I grew up on Humboldt Avenue at a time when a lot of people were more so on the street for economic reasons.
Yeah.
As opposed
what I want you to do now, because you told me that earlier, I want you to focus on the life coach. How are you helping the community? How are you working along with the community? Because that's what I want, the solutions, you know. I know the past is very, very painful, and it's painful not to you alone, but to victims.
Well, let me just expound on that. Mm-hmm. For me at this point, it's no longer painful. It's all fuel.
Oh.
And every day that I'm going out, hanging up posters, I've been hanging up posters that pose the question, if you go to jail, will the gang raise your child? All over. I've been to all over Boston in the inner cities, to Chelsea, to Lynn. I plan on going to as many communities that I feel need them, which are many.
We greatly appreciate that. You know what? Your part of talking about the gang is one aspect, because some gang will tell you that once they get in, there's no way out. They have to stay there. It's do or die. You understand me? Right? And so I want to pose my question, starting with you first.
Please.
Do you feel that the family life is under attack? Family as a whole, the whole structures of where family are now.
Say that one more time.
Do you feel family life is under attack? Like, for instance, they're trying to split up families together. Like, for instance, you were in prison.
Yes.
Do you feel that this is under attack?
Let me say this. 15 years ago, I believed in all sorts of conspiracies. What I've come to learn is a lot of people in power simply just want to stay there. They create laws that help them, and unfortunately, they don't think about the collateral damages that come along with that, of which my neighborhood happens to be one of them. So, go please.
I'm going to ask Linda that. Do you feel overall that our family is being attacked? You know, if you sit and ask most of these guys, they tell you that because I'm this color and because I'm that, my life is that they will take me to prison with ease, right? So you feel that there is a concrete effort to just split families together.
Right, so I feel that the issue with family in the community is that we're dealing with a tremendous amount of poverty. And so when you have economic conditions that exist in our community and people, like a father, they need to work and they need to provide a life for not only themselves but for their children and their significant other. If you take away all of the options to jobs and education and opportunity, people still have to eat. And so what do we then say as a society? If you have a woman with children and she has a voucher, just say she has a Section 8 voucher and she's in housing, one of the first things they say is that the father of the child or the father or the male figure of her family who she's dating or in a relationship with, that no one can live there with her, right? So that starts the separation of the family. Think about the fact that in Boston right now there's only one shelter that will allow a father and a mother to stay with their children. And the only shelter that does that right now is the Dimmock Center. And there's simply not enough beds there for families to stay as intact whole units.
So you feel if it's even maybe a couple of hours, we could allow fathers to be with their family?
You should allow fathers to live with their family as long as the man and woman, or the man and man choose to be together. Make sure that the family stays intact as one single nucleus unit. You can't say to someone, you have children and I'm willing to give you housing, but if I give you housing, then your partner cannot come with you. If both people are both suffering from poverty. So you're willing to send the man to the Pine Street Inn, but you're willing to send the woman and the children into housing. And it's simply not fair. You need the skill and the support of both people working together to raise their children. And to create that divide, to separate that family, it simply isn't right. And we're able to do that because they're poor.
Yeah, but Bobby, you find that I see you pull out that article. So I just refer to it quickly.
Yes, I'm not going to go through this. I'm going to cut through one particular thing, which in terms of our quality of life, I think it's been very, very important that we address this. No justice, no peace, or if we know justice, we know peace. And according to what I consider to be a credible source, the Massachusetts ACLU, as of 2017, black people in Massachusetts are incarcerated at about 8 times the rate of white people, according to the State Sentencing Commission's report. And nationally, by the way, the rate is 6 to 1. So we think of Massachusetts, some of the perceptions of it. And then some of my Latino sisters and brothers in Massachusetts are incarcerated at 5 times.
So Bobby?
Yes, I mean, yes.
That's a trend, right? I see that happening, right? Where we are more people of color, because you single out the term black, right? And I always tell people is that we have transitioned now. We have moved from, slavery to we have moved to they used to call us the N-words, right? And Martin Luther King fought for us as black people, right? Now we have to come together. All of us that sits here are not black, the color black, right? So in our mind, everything that is negative, they say, in terms of black, right? So let's look further at it and say, put all us together. The Hispanics suffer the same thing, right? As us. Lena, fear. I think most of our kids are fearful.
So in terms of the urban communities, I don't necessarily think the kids are fearful. I think that the kids are very aware of their circumstances and their situation. And what we have to always remember is that the kids who are in the community, they're either going to arm themselves to protect themselves.
Fear. I feel it's fear.
Right? So that you say that's fear, I say that if you got to arm yourself to protect yourself, some may say that's smart.
No.
Right?
I'm going to tell you why.
Hence,
I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
You see, protection is different. When you're going to get inside that, you have to, that community, you have to be firing across that community. It's no longer protection. Protection is when somebody actually attack you, right?
Right.
And we'll go to a break, but I'm going to put you to it. Because
you're
the best
I want to
person
say
to
something to that. Yes.
So the other thing you have to talk about with respect to Bobby's comment, it all still comes down to poverty. Because what the Boston Globe also reports is that in Boston, in our community, there is a disparity between income and assets. And that disparity is great. Families of color have $8. Caucasian families have $140,000.
I'm gonna look at that. Hold it, Bobby. We're going to a break. So when we go to the break and we come back, we have to go back at the fair. So we go to a break. When we come back, all right.
Tonight's spotlight is on Touch TV.
Peace and blessings. Touch TV, the fabric of the black community. Unbossed, uncompromised, the black experience, and the truth. Your checkup from the neck up.
Testing. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
When you're running your own business and taking care of your disabled brother, you tend to learn about responsibility pretty quickly.
We have an ET discussion about the fair, right? So we're going to spend about 2 minutes on it. So you have to be snappy. We're going to go to Christian, who is the person who was amongst theirs and the gangsters.
Well, let me say that I disagree with you.
Yeah.
And I agree partly with Linda. It's not so much of fear as sort of a common sense. And you have to always understand that fear, the way you're using it, can sometimes give an excuse. It's like if I'm in the street and I think that you might be a potential killer of me, me killing you is a form of protection. Preemptive violence is a form of protection. That ensures that I'll be around tomorrow if I know the one person who can kill me won't be around tomorrow.
Right.
So what I want to say, so what I'm getting at is this is, everything that y'all are talking about, it makes much sense.
Yeah.
And on some levels, they're hot button good political issues.
Yeah.
But the reality is I know young men and women that make a lot of money, but their mind state is so messed up that they're driving a Bentley around the same block they grew up on.
All right, and so we knock out that idea right away. You show me that you knock out that idea of poverty, because they use.
I don't knock out the idea of poverty. It all starts somewhere.
Right.
Because when a need is created, you have mainstream society that sits there and says to me, Christian white, I want you to believe in the American dream like every other American in this world.
Hold on. Let me say this to you in terms of when we started to, so you'd say, what is a single factor which deals with the whole matter of violence in terms of what you see it as? What in the community, what is that factor which you attribute the whole matter of the gun violence and so in the community?
Lack of imagination.
Okay, hold it. Bobby, you had something to say.
Oh, I want to mention, I think it's very important that proper attribution, the letter and the spirit of how somebody wants to be addressed is very important. And for example, one that really gets to me in terms of denotation and connotation, I think is very dismissive, is the term, the so-called term minority. Because, factually, the majority of folks and every single person is related, but every brother ain't a brother, every sister ain't a sister because of the way we treat each other, is That term, the vast majority of my brothers and sisters around the world are melanated, and of course people of color. But that term, though, in particular, so-called minority,
so your factor,
is dismissive.
Your factor is what? What is the factor which you feel drives the influence of violence in the community?
Well, I think it's a lot of just internal. No justice, no peace, or if we know justice, we know peace, and we can just get really
caught
up.
That.
For example, like what my brother here just said. For example, you know that like if you eliminate that person, that's gone, and now I can live peacefully.
Okay.
No,
that's one way.
That's a trap.
One way.
And I'll tell you why.
This is why, and as I said, is that this is why you see there's a one-prong approach where people not understanding about violence, because you see, you say poverty, right? But as I said to him, once you pull yourself out of that poverty, drive that Bentley, drive that car, right? It's no longer protection, right? It's fear that person, right? I'm trying to show you.
Yet it's not fear.
Wait. Let me tell you, right? If you notice what happened now in terms of when a police meet somebody, police is fearful that he might kill him, and that person is fearful of running away from the police, right? Use of protection, right? Now, if you know gang violence, they form in terms that you have leadership. It become like a government, right? We're inside there, and each one has to protect himself.
No,
right? But
let me explain Boston to you. Boston is not Chicago, LA, where the majority of gangs are under hierarchies. Boston are grassroots, homegrown gangs. Within my one block of where I live in Grove Hall, you could have 50 different streets. All of them could be warring with each other at once. Every member in each gang could be warring with every member in each gang. Boston's a different mindset. It's a true crab in the bucket sort of syndrome. And each individual operates at this level. There's not a situation where, like in LA, you could be a...
So if what you're saying...
He just described politics in Boston.
Not only that, he described organized, he's saying it's organized.
No, I'm saying that it's opposite of organized.
It's disorganized.
So let me put it like this. In my neighborhood, the young people look up to me, they respect what I say, but they're not gonna listen to my orders. I cannot dictate policy versus another major city where there's a hierarchy and the orders come down, you stand on the block, you sell drugs for me, bring the money back, and you work a shift.
Okay.
So it doesn't, I just want you to have a clear perspective on it.
Our next topic will be community policing. Do you think it is effective?
I think it's effective. I think anything is effective if you get to know the neighborhood that you're served, that you become a part of the fabric of the community. So everyone is sort of policing and trying to prevent crime in different ways. Christian doesn't have a gun, but he has information, and for him, education is the power that he's looking to inject into the community. So while he's not a police officer, he's still community policing. Because he's coming into the community, he's reaching out, he's touching the lives of the individuals that he needs to reach, who need him the most. And so I think if everyone takes a hand in that process, then we can all be change agents, and we can all form some role as a community police officer, even though we're not in a uniform.
Right. Bobby, community policing, is it effective?
Well, I don't know I'm not right up in the latest stats on that. Potentially, if we have the trust of the folks that community police are supposed to protect and serve, potentially, it can be very effective. Now, some of the statements that I'm hearing now, in terms of reacting, bad news travels fast, and some of that I'm hearing now, where what we need to do now is have longer prison sentences, and it seems like we're getting into that syndrome now. No, we need to. That's just gonna Or it's just going to increase.
Bobby, I don't know if I agree with you on longer prison sentences. I think under the new criminal justice reform.
You're agreeing with him.
He just
but
said.
I want to say something. I want to say something directly to the policing thing. Yeah. First of all, I don't consider myself a community police officer in any sort of stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I would never. I don't associate with police in any way. Let me make that clear. So what I'm saying is this.
I want you to just see it, man.
So let me say the reality of it is. She brings up a good point, and it's a true point. It's getting to know the people of the community. Right. When police say we're getting to know the people of the community, they're talking about the law-abiding, tax-paying people of the community. There's a whole subculture of young men and women.
And that's why I brought that back, because you see, community policing doesn't mean. I remember when one of the commissioner, the past commissioner, bought a truck, an ice cream truck, and people say, "What are you doing with that?" Right? And that's why I said to you, say, in the community, right? If the community come together, if the community like we are together, right? Then you won't. The only time you hear people talk about the DA is when a police shoots somebody.
But as a district attorney, I need to make sure that the community understands that district attorneys, assistant district attorneys are community servants. They serve the public, and they need to come out of the courtrooms and come into the community that they serve. Right. But with respect to the ice cream truck issue, the reason the ice cream truck comes about is because there was a study done, and there was a documentary done in the city of Boston called This Ain't Normal. And one of the things that was highlighted in the documentary, This Ain't Normal, is that the children in the community, their interaction, their first initial connection with drugs and a gang member was because that individual was Superman to them because he bought them all ice cream. Right. And so to combat that, what the Boston police did is they create this ice cream truck so they too can get to know people in the community, young children in the community in a different way, and they see them as a positive presence.
Can I say something to you? Hold on, I'm coming to you. It happened to me where I have a little spot that I go, and once in a while there's a state trooper might pass through. And every time that state trooper comes there, I feel comfortable. Sometimes he'll just come there and he start a conversation with somebody, right? And he'll just say, they're winning. And it's all about the Red Sox, and it's an argument about it. This is why I said I want us to look at it in terms of not only the poverties and the other thing, right? Because kids, if you bring kids out of that syndrome of saying, I won't tell the police, you understand me? To a thing that daddy right now is upset with so-and-so, and daddy has a gun. You understand me? Right? But kids will stay away, right? Because they know that this is not who I go to tell somebody what we want to do, right? So what we have to do now is to look at the community, and you know that they say community supervision have reduced the amount of incarceration in
which is I mean, let me make it clear, and I mean, I've been in prison multiple times.
Yeah.
What y'all, I mean, on some levels, what y'all are talking about is, it's like, you know, when Linda says, you know, DAs, ADAs, and all that are public servants. Once again, we need to define who the servants are in that sense, and who the community that's being served is.
And that brings it.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to tell you from the perspective of when you want to talk about solutions and bringing people together, first of all, you have to identify the commonalities and the things that people disagree on.
Wait. It's very difficult in Boston, right? And let me tell you why. I found that you have many different nationalities, right? Some of these crimes are motivated by domestic, and they're driven by that. Right, it's not driven out of any commonality, as you'd see it. It's not driven because of politics.
Let me tell you what the commonality is. The commonality is the fact that in every major inner city, it is a gun culture. It's not a read a book when you have
no,
what I'm saying is
wait. I think you're focused too much on the political aspect, right? And when we come back from the break, we're going to take a break. And let me tell you, that way that you see it, I'm telling you, if you go amongst the community, I've walked the streets all day, and I can tell you, it's culturally motivated. It's a lot of factors that is there.
I agree. And I'm telling you the cultural perspective of the young men and women that so many people forget about.
I would tell you, no, I'm telling you, we can't do that because that's why we're not reaching to the solutions. That's why we'll hear somebody say, the ankle brace is not working. What is not working, right? Because we're not looking at the broader community and how to service it. We're going to a break, and when we go to the break and I come back, I'll talk to you, okay?
When you're running your own business and taking care of your disabled brother, you tend to learn about responsibility pretty quickly.
It takes a village to help somebody get their diploma. Changes your whole life.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Es un corto trayecto de su colonia hasta su bosque local. Para encontrar un parque o zona verde cerca de usted, visite descubreelbosque.org.
Welcome back, right? We have the DA here, and we've put her in a hot seat to bring her amongst the community, right? And as I tell, when my associate producer said to me, bring on Linda, I like her personality because I know we could talk about the community. I want to ask you, as a candidate for the DA, what is the most single factor that you think the community want you to deal with?
So for me, the single factor that I think the community wants me to deal with is truth, transparency, and equal access to justice. And what I mean by that is this. The district attorney's office handles 34,000 cases a year. Of those 34,000 cases, you have to remember that 96% of those cases are at the district court level. Some of the issues that Christian raises with respect to guns and gun violence, while you hear that played out on the evening news, it really doesn't make up that bulk of the 34,000 cases. It really is just a small fraction of those cases. The issues that I'm dealing with in Suffolk County and that the community needs to understand is the issue of the opiate addiction, the mental health issues surrounding opiate addiction, also the post-traumatic stress disorders and those issues, particularly involving veterans, why we brought about the Valor Act and we brought in the Valor Court system. We're dealing with issues involving homelessness, which is a little different because now you have people who are seeking shelter, they're breaking and entering into places to get shelter, and then today what they revealed was that people were opening up and subjecting homeless people to conditions that are not really habitable. And the City of Boston Police Department did a crackdown on that. So what you see is people taking our most vulnerable people in our community and preying on them, exploiting them, and financially abusing them. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that everything comes down to money and everything comes down to poverty. And if you have access to resources, a good job, housing, a good quality education, if you can provide those things to your children, the likelihood, and not in this, there are anomalies, but the likelihood of that person then committing a crime is a little different.
I'm not really familiar. The only time I hear about, as I said earlier, about the district attorney is when the district attorney, there's a killing by the police and you hear that the ruling is incorrect, right? What does the district attorney do?
So a district attorney makes the decision, the ultimate decision on whether or not a case will advance to arraignment. Are we going to take out charges and are we going to arraign an individual? But once the district attorney chooses to arraign someone for a crime, right, whether they put it through the district court process, which is you're arrested and you come in for arraignment, or whether we put it through the superior court process, which is the charges are taken out, we present information to a grand jury, The grand jury decides whether or not to issue a true bill, or what we call an indictment.
But there's
and
no
then
defense lawyers at a indictment hearing. It's only the evidence.
Right,
that
it's just the
It's
evidence.
only the evidence.
It's all evidence, and hearsay is admissible.
Okay.
And so what?
So
So it's a little different, but at the end of the day, the power of the district attorney comes in deciding which cases are arraigned. But once a district attorney makes the decision to arraign a case, then essentially you're handing it over now to the process. The district attorney doesn't decide on bail. While we can make a recommendation for bail, we don't determine bail. The district attorney can make a recommendation for sentencing, but the judge will ultimately decide the sentence. The judge will ultimately decide the bail.
But that's not true. If you were charged with enhancements, that's one of the big wars between district attorneys and judges. I was charged with armed career criminal and second subsequent
Let me tell you,
crime.
Christian. Let me tell you, what you have to look at, right? She's the candidate towards DA.
She's been a prosecutor before as well. So
your part, as she said, there are 30,000 cases come.
Yep, 34,000 cases, the
and
majority are not.
she has to deal with an aspect of it that is totally, your part is one part, right?
Well, no, I mean, my only offenses aren't,
right.
I want to make it clear, when we, any case can be indicted, things like that. What I'm pointing out is, there are many sort of perfect what he's talking about. These are tools that the DA uses.
Yeah, but...
And what I'm saying is...
You mean in terms of criminal offense, one aspect of it?
And even when you're talking about the indictment process for non-criminal
But you're
offense,
talking about one aspect, the aspect that deals generally with you, or with criminal, with you're familiar with.
Well, no. I'm just pointing out that...
She gave a broad concept.
It's a broad concept in the way it sounds,
so let me
but
ask
it's not
you,
a
what
broad
is the
concept
most
in the way it
important?
works.
What is the most important thing to the DA?
The most important thing to the DA?
Yeah. What the community see as the most important thing for the DA?
The most important, you look to the DA for protection.
Okay. I'm going to surprise you. Bobby.
Yes, sir.
What is the most important thing to the DA, the community sees in the DA?
Again, in terms of protecting and serving, my rights stop where yours begin. So if I can't handle that, then that's where so it's important that the DA, it's important that the DA has the respect and the trust of the community in terms of just laws and enforcing just laws.
And let me tell you what is most important nowadays to people in the community, and I did a number search around for it, and hear what they say. Commitment to racial justice is the most important thing nowadays. Not the gun violence, not police shooting. There were 73 murders from 2009 to now that involve Massachusetts police. So that's not very important. Racial divide, right? The reputation, honesty, right? These are factors. Criminal offense.
And that's why when I 1,000% agree with that. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to, and that's why when you talk about policing and their understanding the community, it's like when an officer sees a young man dressed a certain way, talking a certain way, whatever the case may be.
Right.
It's not fear. You have to remember, people like me, we have been made killable before we were even killed.
Ignore the word. Ignore the word.
Okay. So let me.
Fearful.
Let me.
It seemed like a wrong topic. It seemed like a wrong topic.
I just want to point out. I just want to point out that when you talk about community police and racial injustice, you have it's like with the ice cream truck thing. Don't join that gang. Come join our gang.
No, that's not really what they did. You see, that's why in 30 seconds I stand up and let me tell you what you say. I went somewhere and I said something to somebody and I said it wrong because I said it to the time period. I wasn't sure about it. Yep. And in 30 seconds, that guy dismissed me, right? You have to be an open mind.
Agreed.
To everything that happened. So, for instance,
I'm a former criminal meeting with a district attorney.
No, that's not what I take you here
for. If that's not open-minded, I don't know what is.
No, what I wanted you to see is to see that this is in terms of looking at the potential of what we could do in terms of solution. Your solution is one aspect of it.
Agreed.
Right? Her solution is another, and Bobby G's one is another. So that's why we come in. We come to all those solutions. You will never have the one answer. She will never have the one answer. She has to come with us in the community, right, and see what is wrong with the community, right? Our violence against one aspect of, like for Hispanic, is different for aspect of, let's say, a Caribbean person. It's different for everybody else, and it's all community related. You want to say
But
something?
I think one of the things all of us realize and understand is that there are racial disparities.
Right.
That we are treated differently in the criminal justice system. And we are not only treated differently, but if something as simple as bail, for example, if we have an issue before the court and our families can't afford the bail, then we'll be detained.
That's one aspect I wanted to come back to you, because no matter how, if you can't afford the bail, you cannot, no matter what you do, right? You see, let me tell you, if you notice in 2006, the police that you met in 2006 is a different police now in 2016, right? The police you meet in 4 years ago is a different...
But that's an assumption, because if that police, or if I still thought the same way I did in 2006, I'd be the same person in 2016.
We got to take that. We're going to take that up. We're going to take that up, right? Bobby, you have 30 seconds before we wrap up. Right?
It runs so deep, these misconceptions. Angel food cake, devil's food cake, a dark day in America. We should celebrate that. And this just runs so deep from way back during the days of the Euro-American slave trade, to me, the worst crime ever committed by one segment of humanity against another. And how today we have these well, I think I just said it right there. No justice, no peace. So if we know justice, we know peace. And part of that is again getting past those that type of negativity.
Bobby, you know you always have space on my show. You gotta come back on my show. We're gonna sit down hard. You have to run a campaign. Let me tell you something. From the first night I saw Linda was willing to come and sit with us. You notice she sat there and she could tell us in terms of the community. She's a community-oriented person. It's not political why I carry here. I tell my associate producer that, look here, I do not care politicians on here because they don't want to come. Linda say, I will come and I will talk, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And I hope the community will be proud of that. This was an heated discussion, right? No. We and I hope you see how valuable you are.
And Christian is a professional speaker, so you put me with a professional motivational.
I'm going to sit down with Christian more because we're going to solve this. And we're going to solve it for all of us, right? We're coming to an end, right? And I want to thank you all here. I want to thank my crew. I got a nice set of crew here, right? Quickly, I want one person to just take off the headset and come over this side, right? Because we're wrapping up. And that's Mr. Charles. He's here. He has become part of my crew to say that we're a community. And he's running as a state representative. He's a brother of mine, right? Thank you all. Mr. Charles.
Great job.